Week 6 of the NFL season is officially in the books after one of the worst Monday night games you're gonna find. Penalties galore. We'll talk about each and every game of the weekend, how I felt about each and every team, where things stack up based around the rest of the league as we stand 6 weeks into the NFL season, looking ahead towards week 7. There is going to be the toolbar on the top of the display today. Hopefully that is not a big issue for you guys. Was having way too many issues with Google Chrome. So going to try and get that cleaned up for you guys for the next one, but we will still have the highlights going through this one. If you guys are new to the channel, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. Leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think. How do you think my rankings are? Who am I too high on? Who am I too low on? Leave a comment as well on which types of videos you guys want to see in the future. Also, be sure to check out my Patreon, which I will leave linked down in the description below, where for $5 a month, you guys will get access to my draft guide and more NFL and college football themed content. But I don't want to waste any more of your time. We got 32 teams to get through. Let's talk about the power rankings, starting off with the number 32 team. And I don't really think it should be a question at this point in time. It is the New England Patriots. Now, on the bright side for New England, I do think you have some positivity to talk about for the first time in what seems to be the entire season. You'll win the week 1 game against the Cincinnati Bengals, who we'll talk about. But yeah, this is an offense that hasn't looked great all season long. And I wouldn't say it looked great against Houston, but you saw some positive things. You saw some things that you felt like you could build off of. And that's Drake May. Drake May, the number 3 overall pick from North Carolina. Yeah, he had a couple of interceptions in this game, but for the most part, he threw some beautiful passes in this one, and he gave this offense life. We talked about it last week. Jacoby Brissett didn't give this offense much life, and Drake May showed the ability to do that. He pushed the ball down the field, made good decisions with the football. That's something you feel pretty excited about moving forward if you are a Patriots fan. Now, on the opposite end, the defense wasn't able to get any stops on Houston today without Nico Collins. On top of that, the defense as a whole, pass rush wasn't really landing, and the offensive line stinks. I mean, this Patriots offensive line was doing a pretty poor job of keeping Drake May upright and protected, which was why a lot of people were concerned about him coming into the starting lineup so soon. It was, is he ready? Is this offensive line going to keep him upright, and does he have the weapons? The weapons is still a concern as well. Jalen Polk struggled with drops. He had some question marks there. But from what you saw from Drake May, while yes, I still think you're the worst team in the league, that hasn't changed. You lost. But there is some positivity, some stuff to build on if you are a Patriots fan and you have hope for the first time in, well, it seems like 3-4 years. So they're 1-5, still the worst team in football, but you feel good about Drake May moving forward. At number 31, we do have the Miami Dolphins. They're coming off a bye week. It's going to be very interesting to see how these next few weeks go. They take on the Colts in Indianapolis next week. That'll be a fun game to kind of see what this team is going to look like against a pretty bad Colts defense. The Dolphins haven't looked good since Tua went down. They have absolutely no movement in this offense. Tua is the offense, and this offense is predicated on his ability to get the ball out of his hands quickly. Well, they haven't had that at this point in the season. So what is this team going to look like? How is this team going to play? There's some question marks to be had there. The trade deadline's coming up. I think if this team's 2-4, 2-5, you could see this team be a seller. But at the same time, I have concerns about what is Tua going to be? We got the report today from Mike McDaniel that Tua's going to play at some point this year, which to me doesn't make a lot of sense. I just don't really see how that is going to help this team. I don't see this team being a playoff team. And if he gets hurt again, the blood's on their hands at that point. So, well, it'll be interesting to kind of see where this goes. But yeah, didn't play this week. They've looked terrible without Tua the last few weeks. Not really anything to write home about for me. I've got them staying at the number 31 spot. At number 30, we do have the Tennessee Titans. They are 1-4, coming off their bye week, and a game that I actually was at. I was at this game in Tennessee, and this team is just not good. And from really the beginning of this game, They have so many issues really on both sides of the football. We'll start with the offense. I mean, Will Levis against a really bad Colts defense has 92 or 95 yards passing. Couldn't even get 100 yards on this team. I've been saying it for weeks. It's time for Tennessee to move on from Levis. Levis is not the guy moving forward. He is not the answer at the quarterback position. You can't even blame the offensive line for this one. The offensive line did a really good job of keeping Levis upright, helping him, stay protected and wasn't putting him in a lot of harm's way. And it just didn't matter at the end of the day. He couldn't connect with his receivers. Calvin Ridley was targeted 8 times in this game, didn't have a single reception. That's not good. The only positive thing you could take away is, the offensive line did a good job protecting, and the run game was pretty solid. Tony Pollard had a really nice game. 3rd and 19, has a big run into the end zone. The run game was getting it going, but I genuinely think that it's time to move on from Will Levis if you're the Titans, because your offense just isn't going anywhere. I don't think it's going anywhere, period. But I felt better about it when Mason Rudolph was under center a couple weeks ago. On the defensive side of the ball, this is a defense that I don't think can create pressure really at all. They don't, outside of Jeffrey Simmons, you might get a splash play from Harold Landry, but that's about it. The secondary feels very weak. L'Jarius Sneed looks like one of the worst free agent signings of the offseason. He's been terrible. He's going to have like 3 pass deflections on the year, it appears. He's just not been productive for this team. Hasn't played up to the standard we would have expected. Jarvis Brownlee was a player that I was pretty low on coming into this season. I wasn't high on him as a draft prospect. He looked really good, but this Titans team has loads of issues, and I think the play calling is genuinely terrible for Tennessee right now as well. Just bad decisions. I forgot DeAndre Hopkins was on this team. They just don't know how to get their playmakers involved. And I think this Titans team is a real mess. They stay at number 30. I don't think they're very good. Never have. And they didn't do anything to move up or down this week. At number 29, it is going to be the Cleveland Browns. Now, I wanted to move them up. I thought there could have been a legit case maybe that this team wasn't as bad as we thought. And the defense finally kind of shows up. You get a big play from Myles Garrett. The defense and special teams score a touchdown. But the more you kind of look into the deep, dirty work of this Browns team, this team is on pace to be historically bad. They are one of the first teams in NFL history, if not the first, to not even score 20 points in the first 6 games of the season. This offense is so dead. They have absolutely no hope on this offense. Deshaun Watson looks absolutely horrible. I mean, I don't even know. There's literally no defending him at this point. He's been awful all season long. The defense, while it played good this week against the Eagles, this is not a defense that we saw last year that could single-handedly win you football games. You're not getting that play from the defense. On top of that, the run game is pretty much non-existent for this team, so you're forcing Deshaun Watson to have to throw the football more, which he has shown time and time again he does not have the ability to do. The offensive line's been terrible. The play calling has been subpar, but I don't even know how much we can blame Stefanski when it definitely seems like ownership basically has him in a bind and we have to pay this guy. We have to play him. Deshaun Watson does not give this team the best chance to win. Nobody actually believes that. And they cannot win games. This is a genuinely horrible situation for the Browns that I think is just going to continue to get worse for them. The schedule doesn't look easier. This is too talented of a roster to be this bad. They're 1-5 right now. The defense is playing good. You got receivers. Deshaun Watson is an absolute disaster, an absolute nightmare. And I got the Browns at 29 still. The defense is the only reason I'm still giving them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt at this point and keeping them from being the worst team in the league. At number 28, we do have the Carolina Panthers, a team that still hasn't been good, and it really shows on the defensive side of the football. That's where you can just really tell that this team is not a very good football team right now. They have really a lot of inexperience on the defensive side of the football. They don't have much of a pass rush. They're not able to get to the quarterback, but I think what you do feel solid about if you're a Panthers fan is I like the way Andy Dalton's playing. This offense is kind of able to move the ball up and down the field. Deontay Johnson's had a pretty solid last few weeks for this team. They're getting Xavier Legette involved in the offense, and he looks like he's going to be a hit as a draft pick for them. The offense looks pretty solid. The offensive line's done a good job of protecting him up front. Really, the defense is where you have your issues. This is still a really young team. No one really had high expectations for Carolina coming into this season. And they've been about where we thought they would be. But I do think there's some momentum to build off of. You're getting good play from your playmakers, and you can hopefully move forward in the draft season, try and go get a franchise defensive player, a piece that you can kind of build around and go from there. But I think they've played solid since they moved to Andy Dalton. I think this team's been competitive. They've been a good offensive team, and we'll see if they can continue to build off that. But I got them at number 28. At number 27, we still have yet to have any up or down movement yet. I got the Jaguars at 27, and man, I don't even know where to begin with this team. They traded Roy Robertson Harris to the Seahawks for a 6th-round pick. To me, that's basically the sign of, yeah, we're selling. This season is over. They're 1-5, and when you watch the Jaguars, they should be worse. They should be 0-6, genuinely. I talked about it last week when they did beat the Colts, and I was like, I don't know how you can sit up here as a Jags fan and feel confident after that win when you basically blew it. You were up 14 with 6 minutes to go, and you basically let the Colts come back and gave them every opportunity to win that football game. You couldn't have felt good about it. I think the body language is terrible. I mean, it starts with the head coach talking about the culture, which he's in charge of. So if you're not a fan of the culture, you got to look in the mirror, Doug, because this has been all you since last season. This has been one of the worst choke jobs of an organization we have seen. On top of that, I mean, you got Trevor Lawrence and Gabe Davis laughing on the sideline when you're down double digits. That is not a good look for your franchise. This is a team that doesn't seem serious. They don't have any identity on either side of the football. Travis Etienne has been, I know he got hurt in this game, but he's been terrible for you. The receivers, I do think Trevor Lawrence deserves some of the blame for this, because for this whole season. Inaccuracy, people are going to point to, why aren't people talking about these interceptions from other quarterbacks? It's not the interceptions that worry me about Trevor Lawrence. It's the brutal inaccuracy that he has. And it's been very apparent this year. But I think a lot of the game yesterday, Trevor Lawrence had a solid game. Bad interception, yes, but 4 drop touchdowns in this one. There's just everything that could go wrong for Jacksonville is going wrong this season. And I don't really see any way that this changes, because if you look at their upcoming schedule, they got New England, and then after that, they've got a gauntlet of games. So, I mean, I think this is going to get a lot worse for Jacksonville before it gets better. They're at number 27, and if Doug Peterson is still the head coach of this team after they lose, if they lose again in London next week, I would be dumbfounded if Doug Peterson is still a head coach. Number 26, we do have the first. Nope, we don't. We still have the Las Vegas Raiders. So, I mean, from number 32 to number 25, that team stayed the same as well. Really wasn't much movement. I mean, the Raiders, I don't really know what this Raiders team is. They're 2-4, probably could be 0-6. Had a couple of really weird games in there. But, yeah, I mean, it's what we expected from this Raiders team. No run game really whatsoever. They have the worst quarterback play outside of Cleveland probably in the NFL right now. And maybe Tennessee I'd put in there as well. But Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, they just aren't the answers for your franchise. There's a lot of buzz after the incident on the sideline where you see Max Crosby shoving one of the coaches. If I'm Vegas, right, I'm not going anywhere. My franchise has no identity. I would entertain offers on Max Crosby, which I know Raiders fans aren't going to want to hear this, but you could get a first and a third for him, maybe a first and a third or a first and a second if you're lucky. I mean, why not do that deal, right? Like you get a haul back for a really good defensive player. I mean, Montez Sweat went for a second last year. You're telling me that in this economy, Max Crosby's not going for at least one first round pick, maybe two? I do it in an instant. I think you have to do that if you're Vegas. I don't think he's on the table because he's been one of their best players over the last few seasons. But if you really want to shake things up, commit to tanking basically, that might be the move that you have to make. You get an extra first round pick and a really good edge rusher class. Maybe you can get some better value to move up for one of these quarterbacks if there's a guy that you like. I would consider it. It looks like Devontae Adams is going to be moved anyways. I think that this Raiders team has to shake something up because they're kind of stuck in purgatory right now where they're not good enough to be a playoff team. They're not bad enough to be one of these top 5 picks yet because they're going to find ways to claw and scratch and win these games. And I just don't think that's going to help Vegas in the long run. So on the bright side, if you are a Vegas fan, Brock Bowers looks like maybe the best tight end in the league this year. So I feel really confident about his progression moving forward. But overall, there's just not much to be excited about if you're a Raiders fan, and they stay at number 26. At number 25, another team that remains the same. Another team that was on a bye week this week. We had the Los Angeles Rams. This is a Rams team that we've talked about it for the last few weeks, so I'm not going to really spend a ton of time here, but this is a Rams team that just cannot really stay out of their own way in terms of injuries. Puka Nacua goes down. You had pretty much the entire team out. Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp. Matthew Stafford's getting banged up because there's injuries all along the offensive line with Steve Avila. And you name it, pretty much everyone's hurt on this Rams team. They found this team could be 0-5. They could also be like 4-1. This team's been a solid team. They've been competitive. They've found ways to be in some of these close games. I think for as young as a defensive line as you have in Los Angeles, I don't think you feel terrible about where your defense is. I think Jared Verse is probably the front runner for Defensive Rookie of the Year at this point. Braden Fisk has got to be in the top 5 of that conversation, though. I think he's looked really solid for you. So those are some areas you feel pretty good about if you're a Rams fan, but there's definitely got to be you got to get healthy. I'm not writing off the Rams as a playoff team either because you're only 3 games below 500. The leader of your division right now is only 2 games ahead of you, and you beat that team in San Francisco. So there's some potential there for the Rams to get healthy, get back, and get into the playoffs. But that's all predicated on their health. We'll see if they're able to get guys back in the lineup. But I still have them at 25. Didn't play this week and obviously didn't move up or down as a result. Number 24, we have the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona is one of the hardest teams to watch on a week-to-week basis because you're going to get a game like we saw last week where you beat San Francisco by 9, you blow the Rams out of the water, but more often than not, this defense is going to get played off the field, and it happened again. We saw it against Washington 2 weeks ago. It happened against Green Bay. Jordan Love absolutely lit up this team. I had 1 interception in this one, but for the most part, Jordan Love was in complete command of this game from the very beginning. And it didn't really seem like the Cardinals stood a chance. The offense didn't really get it going. I know Marvin Harrison had a concussion, but just never really felt like the offense got clicking, which has been probably the weirdest part about this Cardinals team because the first 3 weeks of the season, Kyler Murray was probably the MVP pick. This offense looked so good, and it looked like this was going to be one of the best offenses in football. And while it's been a good offense, I feel like more often than not, when I'm tuning into a Cardinals game, offense just feels stale. Teams are able to figure out this offense, and they're not able to move the ball very much. Kyler Murray's had some pretty bad inaccuracies, overthrowing balls over guys' heads. So, I'd like to see that get cleaned up, but I don't really know what the issue is here if I am a Cardinals fan. Obviously, the defense is bad. We know that, and we knew that coming into the year. The offense hasn't been great either. I have them dropping 3 spots to the number 24. Their offense, when it's clicking, is one of the best in the league. But right now, it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of chemistry there. And the defense is really, really bad. So I've got the Cardinals sitting at number 24 and hoping that they can get a bounce back week coming up. Number 23, we do have the New York Football Giants. It sucks because I actually think you're getting pretty good play from both sides of the football, and this team has 2 losses that could have been different if you had a kicker. That's really what it comes down to. Kickers kind of losing the Giants games right now. You had a bad one from Greg Joseph, has a couple of missed kicks in this one. It's kind of too late. And then you lost the Commanders game because you didn't have a kicker. On the defense, I mean, we've got to talk about Dexter Lawrence as a defensive player of the year. Second in the NFL in sacks as a nose tackle. That doesn't happen. That is not a normal statistic. There's a legitimate case that Dexter Lawrence is the best defensive player in football right now. And yes, that is not an exaggeration. He very well could be the best defensive player in the league. I know there's going to be some conversation on maybe TJ Watt or Fred Warner's in that conversation, but I think Dexter Lawrence has been that freaking good this year. But I also think you got a really, really good play from your pass rush overall. Brian Burns had a really solid game. Azeez Ojulari played well. The defense as a whole has actually played pretty good for the Giants this year. I think offensively, you had a Daniel Jones game. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't anything to really write home about if you are a Giants fan. I didn't think he played horrible. I thought the interception was bad, just throwing off his back foot in a triple coverage. That was a bad read, but for the most part, I just didn't think it was a bad overall performance from him. Tyrone Tracy was okay. I don't have them moving up or down this week. I think the Giants team is kind of where they were last week, a scrappy team that's going to be in a lot of close games. They're going to squeak some of these out. They didn't have Malik Neighbors, so that's a big loss, or Devin Singletary. So those are 2 big losses for their offense that when they're playing, this could be a completely different team. I got the Giants sitting at number 23. At number 22, staying the same again, it is the Denver Broncos, a team that I just feel like I can't really understand what this team is. I know I'm probably lower on the Broncos than a lot of people. I know a lot of people pick the Broncos to be one of these top teams in the league right now. I just don't know how you can watch this Broncos team and say that. Like, the defense has been fantastic. It's been one of the best defenses in the league. Seemed like this week against the Chargers was really the first week where I don't know if this defense is that good. Or I'm not going to say that. The defense showed signs of weakness, I should say. And there were just moments where it seemed like the Chargers were able to move the ball a little bit easier than the Broncos would have liked to see. The offense, though, it's starting to get pretty alarming, just how bad the offense has been. Bo Nix has shown flashes, but overall just way too inconsistent. I'm not ready to write the kid off. He's a rookie, but there are inconsistencies there in Bo Nix's game. On top of that, the lack of a run game is just, it's horrible for the Broncos. They just don't have any identity on the ground. They cannot move the ball in the run game, and that's going to be a big thing for this team. You got to be able to run the football. I like this Broncos team. I think their defense is going to be good enough to keep them in a lot of games, very similar to the Giants, where I don't know quite what the ceiling of the offense is, but I think their defense is going to be good enough to keep them competitive, keep them in some of these close games. And if they're able to do that, then you feel pretty good about this team moving forward. But you got to get better play from the offense. Cortland Sutton had probably his best game of the year, but it's just been far too inconsistent for the offense from the beginning of the season. And that's why I got them sitting at number 22. At number 21, we do have my Indianapolis Colts. Now, as I mentioned, was at the Titans game, had a really cool experience pregame, ended up getting an Anthony Richardson jersey signed, which will be on this wall probably next week. But this Colts team, yeah, they move up 3. It's really more an indication of I just think they're better than the other teams we mentioned. And not so much I think the Colts are very good. I actually think that this Colts team is pretty bad. I'm going to be honest. And I haven't said that about my team in about 3 seasons where I genuinely think this is a bad football team. But when you're up close, the lack of a defense, it shows. And it's very, very apparent. I mean, I thought the secondary played pretty good. Jalen Jones had a really good game. Sam Womack has been a huge find for this Colts team. He's been one of the best corners in the league the last couple of years. And then you get Kenny Moore back in the lineup. That's been a great addition. The defense wasn't able to generate any push up front. They weren't able to really create any pressure on Will Levis. And for an offensive line that has been troublesome in Tennessee, you would like to see this defense generate pressure. It never happened in this game, which, okay, I don't like that, but we'll move forward. The linebackers have been really bad. I mean, too many missed tackles, busted coverages. Like that run from Tony Pollard, that's all the linebackers. They need to be there to close the gap. You know they're running the ball on 3rd and 19. Everyone in the stadium knows they're running the ball. How do you allow a touchdown on 3rd and 19? That is unacceptable. Gus Bradley should be out the door because his defense is an absolute disaster week in, week out. They cannot stop the run. They cannot stop anybody on the defensive side of the football. Offensively, I think you had a pretty solid day. But this is the day where you kind of realize, like, okay, the ceiling is capped with Joe Flacco. There's just not everything's available to him. I think they have a more convincing win with Anthony Richardson yesterday. The lack of a run game without Jonathan Taylor, though, has to be the most alarming part about this offense. I mean, every time Trey Sermon got the ball, you knew it was going to be a 1 or 2 yard pickup, and that was it. He had absolutely no quickness to hit the holes. His vision was poor. A horrible game for him. Tyler Goodson should have been the number 2 back in this game, or should have been the number 1 and should be the number 2 overall. It just seems like they didn't want to give him the ball. I just didn't understand that. I thought the play calling was very questionable. There was a sequence in the goal line where it's 3rd and goal or 1st and goal, and you run 3 straight dives straight up the middle and settle for a field goal. I mean, there's just no creativity. Anthony Richardson definitely opens up this offense, and this is a season where, I mean, if you make the playoffs, great. This is not a playoff team in the slightest. This is a season where you need to see Anthony Richardson develop. If he was good to go, I have absolutely no idea why he didn't play yesterday. I mean, absolutely no idea. Kind of unacceptable in my opinion. I mean, I don't know all the details. Like I said, I was up close. I was there for warm-ups. He looked fine to me. So maybe there's some stuff going on behind the scenes that we don't know about, but a win's a win. They're at 500. You feel good about that, but them jumping up has no indication of what they are as a team. It's just, I just have been less impressed with the teams behind them. At number 20, we have the team we just saw on Monday Night Football, and that's going to be the New York Jets. Man, this Jets team just continues to find ways to disappoint me week in and week out. And what sucks is, like, we talked about it last week. Robert Saleh gets fired. Thank God. It was time for him to go. It was just a disaster for this team in this situation. This loss sucks if you're a Jets fan, because I think you got like a borderline vintage Rodgers performance in this game. He was pretty perfect in this game. He obviously had the Hail Mary, but some of the throws he was making, like on the move, just putting it on a dime. The play in the 4th quarter where he fits it into a window that, no joke, is about that big to Allen Lazard is one of the best plays you're going to see all season long. You got a good Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall game. This defense has just completely turned on itself. I mean, yes, the penalties are terrible. I think there were some bad calls in there, but like Javon Kinlaw kind of lost this team the game with the roughing the passer call that puts them in the red zone. Like, that's an unacceptable penalty. Similarly to the Giants last night, if you have a kicker, maybe you win this football game. Things could have been a lot different in a lot of different ways, but time and time again, it's a lack of discipline with this Jets team. Lack of discipline in terms of creativity in the offense, the defense getting costly penalties. I mean, DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner have been not as good as you would have hoped. So there's concerns there. There's just overall concerns really everywhere. And like, yeah, there's still time to right the ship. The schedule gets a little bit easier after this. This was kind of your toughest stretch of the season, but you have to win games. You have to play disciplined, Rodgers looks good, but he's also getting banged up. The offensive line has not done a good job protecting for him up front. So I got the Jets at 20. I'm hoping they can prove me wrong, turn it around. But right now, there's just more questions than I have answers with this New York Jets team. At number 19, we do have the New Orleans Saints. Now, the Saints, a team that I was pretty low on coming into the year, they're gradually dropping down each and every week. But I do feel like maybe you got something with Spencer Rattler. I know he had a couple picks in this one, had the one touchdown, but played pretty good. Looked good on the run. Was pretty good against the blitz. I believe he was 6 of 8 in this game. Had his touchdown against the blitz. Was pretty accurate with the football for the most part. I mean, you kind of put him into an impossible situation. Chris Olave goes out in the first quarter with a concussion. I mean, Bub Means has a touchdown. I know, shout out my guy Peter, was a big Bub Means guy in the draft. I mean, defense was okay. He had a big play there, but yeah, I mean, this Saints team is like right middling in the league right now. There's just nothing special about this team on either side of the football. The run game's average, and it stinks because when you see the first 2 weeks of the season for the Saints team, you thought this was going to be like one of the best teams in the league this year, the way they were able to implement the play action, the stuff Kubiak was doing with this offense. It was pretty exciting for that time for the Saints, but since then, it's been a pretty big disaster if you are a New Orleans fan. The offense doesn't look the same. Derek Carr's out the next few weeks, and you got Sean Payton coming back to town. So we'll see how that one goes, but yeah, nothing really special about the Saints team, but it wasn't a loss that I felt so bad about that I needed to move them down significantly. They fall to the number 19 spot this week. At number 18, we do have the Seattle Seahawks. Started 3-0, and I told you guys, my big caveat with this team was, let's see them play a real team. Like, their first 3 games were against Denver, and Bo Nix's first game was against the Patriots. It was against the Dolphins with Skylar Thompson. Since then, they're 0-3, lost to the Giants, lost to the Lions, and then lost to the 49ers. Now, I will say they looked decent against the 49ers. Geno Smith had by far his worst game of the year, but I thought the defense was okay, given the fact that everybody on your team is pretty much hurt. The run game was all right. I mean, yeah, the Seahawks team is kind of what I expected. They are exactly in the middle of the league pretty much. I mean, I don't really see their offense as anything special. And this defense, with the amount of injuries they have in terms of the secondary, their defensive front is pretty much completely depleted at this point. The defense has to get healthy and improve, but you haven't really gotten great play from your offense the last few weeks. Didn't look good against the Giants. It did look good against Detroit, but weren't able to finish because of the defense. And then this game against San Francisco, it wasn't a game that I felt amazing about for them. So we've got them at 18. We'll see. Kind of feels like they're free falling right now, but I do think that this is a team that has been a bit disappointing the last few weeks. At number 17, we've got the LA Chargers. They come off the bye week, end up getting the win in Denver, which is never an easy place to play. And I think this bye couldn't have come at a more perfect time for the Chargers. You get healthy at the most perfect time. You've had injuries left and right with this team, with the offensive line, and Justin Herbert's banged up. And you get healthy, and you were able to pull off a much-needed win in the division. I still don't really know what this Chargers team is. I didn't think their offense was all that impressive. Herbert had a touchdown. It was like 12 carries for 99 yards or something like that. It was not a particularly awesome game from J.K. Dobbins on the ground. The defense was okay. You were able to force turnovers on Bo Nix, force him into some bad decisions, but I don't know what this Chargers team's identity is. Are they going to be a team that's just going to play hard-nosed defense and win games that way on the ground, similarly to how Harbaugh did at Michigan? It's just going to be the ground and pound, run the football, play hard defense. Is that what this team is going to be, or are they going to be more of a pass-oriented offense? I haven't really seen the answer to that through this so far in the season. I think the defense, like I said, they've been good. I don't think they've been anything special. So we'll see kind of where this goes if you're a Chargers fan. I still got them at 17. They do jump up a spot, but not a team that I'm like super impressed with up to this point in the season. At number 16, man, it's the Dallas Cowboys. And you could argue that this team should be lower, and you would probably be right. This team is one of the weirdest teams I think I've ever seen that probably could be 1-5 at this point in the season. We could talk about injuries all we want. The point is, this team is just not good. They're not a very talented roster. Dak was good last year because he had weapons to kind of get the ball out of his hand. Ferguson, CeeDee Lamb, you had Brandon Cooks, who was at least serviceable as a player. Tony Pollard in the receiving game. You really don't have half those guys this year. I mean, CeeDee Lamb's looked great. That's it. That's all you're getting from your offense right now. There's absolutely no run game. Their play calling is not great. McCarthy should probably be on the short list of head coaches that need to be fired tomorrow. He's been terrible. The defense, though, you bring in Mike Zimmer, who hadn't coached in the league in 5 years, and this defense isn't good. They're not a very good defense. Yes, you have injuries to Parsons and Lawrence, but Trayvon Diggs has been terrible. He's getting burned left and right. He's burnt toast again. I mean, you hate to see that. They cannot stop the run. They cannot establish the run. And then since you can't establish the run, teams can just play back, pass the ball. Dak is starting to force the ball into bad coverages again, which was the issue. And when you look at their schedule, it doesn't get easier for this team. They go into the bye week next week, but I don't know how a single Dallas Cowboys fan can feel excited about the future, especially when you look at your last 4 home games. You get blown out in your building by the Packers in the playoffs. Then you beat Cleveland on the road. You're excited. You got the Saints, a winnable game where they absolutely embarrass you. That loss is looking worse by the week. Then the score was a 1-possession game, but everyone knows you got pretty much embarrassed by Baltimore. And then you get beat 47-9 in your own building by a good Lions team. Don't get me wrong, but that's just a game you should not lose by 38 points on your home turf. I don't know how that's possible. The offensive and defensive lines have been a disappointment, and this Cowboys team has been one of the biggest disasters this offseason. I don't know whether you buy or sell at the trade deadline if you're Jerry, and I got them sitting dead in the middle of the league at number 16, but not too far ahead of them. I do have the Philadelphia Eagles, who did not move up or down for me because I didn't see anything that justified that for them. They were barely able to put away this Browns team. I mean, that should tell you everything you need to know. I want to say it was up. Jalen Hurts started this game, I want to say 2 for 9. Yikes. I mean, Jalen Hurts has been one of the probably bottom 10 quarterbacks in the league this year. We could talk about the weapons all we want, but Jalen Hurts has not been good. And, you get your weapons back. That's great. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. It's great to see A.J. Brown back on the field and dominating yet again. But, man, this offense feels too predictable. And the defense isn't very good either. You're lucky that you went up against Deshaun Watson, who's basically a corpse right now, because that offense can't move the football. If you played a competent offense with the performance you put up yesterday, you're not winning that football game. I think this Eagles team is bad, quite frankly. I just do not see this team as a playoff team, in all honesty. And yet they're number 15 because they've got good play from the trenches. And I can't really deny the skill positions. Goddard, Barkley, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith. Like, when this team's healthy on the skill positions, they look like a good football team. But in all honesty, I don't think this is a good football team. They don't move up or down because you should have beat that Browns team by about 4 scores, and they weren't able to do it. So we'll see what this team's able to do. Nick Sirianni shaves his head and fights with fans. That's going to make a big difference moving forward, I bet, for the Eagles. I think this is a team that's just – they have no identity either on either side of the football. And I've got the Eagles sitting at number 15. At number 14, another team staying the same. We got the Cincinnati Bengals. I know. I'm higher on the Bengals. I need to stop doing this because they looked bad again. But they won. Like, I just didn't feel like I could move them down after a win. I thought the secondary played pretty good in this game, though. DJ Turner made some really nice plays. Cam Taylor-Britt, some of the just timely pass breakups on Daniel Jones was really impressive by the secondary, which we hadn't really seen. And Trey Hendrickson was a machine in this one. That you feel pretty good about. And the other thing you feel great about is Joe Burrow is playing legitimately at an MVP level right now. I mean, he looks incredible. The decision-making, the precision. I mean, he's getting out of the pocket and running for a 49-yard touchdown. This is an interesting team because I think the offense is good. I think this offense is really good. They've been clicking. Didn't really have a great game against this Giants defense. That was weird. The receivers weren't able to really get it going. They didn't really establish the run until the fourth quarter, where you had Chase Brown with the big pull-away touchdown. So that you feel okay about. The defense finally played a competent game. Now, the question you got to start asking is that on the fact that you're playing the Giants offense, or is this Bengals defense actually turning a corner? We'll find out next week. I think that this Bengals team, I've talked about it. I'm not ready to write this Bengals team off. They got the Browns next week. They could very easily be 3-4. And I mean, look at the rest of the AFC. I mean, we've talked about pretty much the entire AFC West at this point, the entire AFC South except one team. Missed one team in the AFC West. And yeah, there's two other teams ahead of them in the North, but I think this is still one of the better teams in the AFC right now. I've got them at number 14. We'll see if they're able to kind of continue to build off of this momentum. Hopefully, it can turn into more wins for them. But I got the Bengals, sitting at the number 14 spot. At number 13, we've got the Pittsburgh Steelers, another team that just kind of stays in the same spot. Justin Fields didn't look good, though. I mean, I don't see how very many Steelers fans can really justify the performance he had. Bad underthrows, turnover-worthy plays, making bad decisions, making bad reads with the football. That's your concern with Justin Fields. I've said it for 3 years at this point. Justin Fields isn't a good quarterback. He's a good athlete. He's got a good arm. He can run a little bit, but that's about it. Like, I just don't think he's a good winning quarterback for you. I know Steelers fans never want to hear that, and they never want to acknowledge the facts, but your ceiling is very limited with Justin Fields as your quarterback, and you're 4-2 against, let's face it, who have you really beaten up to this point? Like, which games do you look at and you're like, that's a really good win on our schedule? You lost to the Colts and you lost to the Cowboys. Your 4 wins this season, week 1 against the Falcons, okay. That win looks better by the week. You beat Denver in week 2. Okay, not a bad one there. You beat the Raiders this week. The Raiders don't look good. And then your 4th win, I'm blanking on who they played, but who did they play to get that 4th win? That was you beat the Chargers, who pretty much had everyone banged up in that game. Which of these wins do you feel great about if you're a Steelers fan? On top of that, I still think, the defense is playing well. I'll give them that. The offense just continues to have question marks. You need another playmaker outside of Pickens, and you need to potentially establish more of a run game. It's hard to do that when the entire offensive line seemingly gets banged up. Zach Frazier got injured in this game. So I do have a lot more questions about this Steelers team than most people are willing to ask. And that's why I got them at the number 13 spot. I just really struggle with this team. Yeah, the defense is good. They're 4-2, 2 games above 500, but I just don't look at this team and think they're a very good football team. At number 12, we've got the Chicago Bears. I jumped on the Bears bandwagon last week. I had them at number 16, way higher than anybody else had them. And I talked about it. I said, look, from the second half of that game against Indianapolis, Caleb Williams turned a switch. There was something different in that second half. If you watch that game, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. He looked comfortable. He looked controlled, made good decisions with the football. That was on full display in London. 4 touchdowns to 1 interception. He looked incredible. The accuracy, the timing with some of these throws he's making. This is the quarterback that Chicago has been waiting for, and he's playing very good football right now. I mean, yeah, you could talk about some of the games that they've been in. You beat Carolina. Okay, how am I supposed to feel great about that? Oh, you also beat Jacksonville. Okay. Oh, you beat Tennessee. I mean, those are three of my bottom 4 or 5 teams in the league right now. I get it. They haven't played anybody. But it's the way that they're winning these games. The defense has been good all season long. Let's not forget that they have a top 10 to 12 defense in the NFL right now that's playing really good football. They've got a good secondary. They're generating a good rush. They've got good linebackers, right? It's the offense that's really making good plays. It's a good pass rush in Jacksonville. Weren't really able to get home. The offensive line's playing better. DeAndre Swift, what happened? I mean, he looks like one of the best running backs in the league. He's running with more patience. He's better with the vision, finding holes in lanes. And Caleb is distributing the ball all over. Everyone wants to say DJ Moore is kind of the odd man out. I get it. He's not been awesome for them. But you've got 2-3 other really good weapons. Cole Kmet has been incredible for this team. You get good play from Keenan Allen. Rome Odunze's played well. There's a lot to like about this Bears team. I know I'm higher on the Bears than the consensus is, but I really like what Chicago's doing. I think this team is going to sneak into the playoffs. When you look at the rest of the NFC, I mean, I think we get one NFC East team. I think we might get 2 NFC South teams, but I like this Bears team, man, and I think they're going to be a really good football team and a tough team to beat. They've got some easy games coming up, and then their schedule does get really tough, so they're going to have to find ways to win, but I do have the Bears sitting at number 12. At number 11, we talked about one of those NFC South teams. It is going to be the Atlanta Falcons, pulling off another win in the division, beating Carolina. Kirk Cousins looks good. The playmakers have finally seemingly arrived for this Atlanta team. We've kind of been waiting for this version of the Falcons for a few years now. You've been waiting to get the good play from Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and Bijan Robinson. You finally are getting that. Kyle Pitts is getting more acclimated into the offense. Drake London's playing great. This offense looks really good. I've been really impressed with this Falcons offense the last few weeks. They're winning games. They're playing good football. I like that about them. I still don't like the pass rush, and I'm going to talk about this until probably after the deadline, because if I'm Atlanta, I know I need another rusher. Like, that's the one thing. Judon's been fine. I don't think he's been this rusher that I feel incredible about moving forward. He's been okay. I don't have much to say other than that. I've got the Falcons sitting at my number 11 spot. They stay the same for me from where they were last week. You beat Carolina. The offense looked good. Bijan got involved. I felt pretty good about the way they were able to move the football. I had the Falcons sitting at number 11. At number 10, it's the other NFC South team. I know a lot of people are upset that I have Tampa still over Atlanta because Atlanta did win the head-to-head matchup. I think Tampa's just a more balanced team. I think they've got a better pass rush with Yaya Diaby, Vita Vea. Kalijah Kancey got back into the offense, and that's exciting if you are a Bucs fan. You also get Antoine Winfield Jr. back in the offense. Or back in the defense, excuse me. So the defense is pretty much back to full strength. You've got all your guys back. That's exciting. The offense, though, I think is still, right now they're playing like one of the best units in the league. Not a great start for Baker at 3 interceptions in the first half, I believe. Turned it around and played a pretty perfect game after that. I mean, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are playing really good football right now for them. And then you're getting play from Sean Tucker, the running back out of Syracuse from a couple of years ago, who's like kind of flown under the radar. I mean, I like him better than I like Rachaad White on this team. The offensive line's playing well. I mean, this team's got playmakers galore. The offensive coaching staff has been absolutely phenomenal. Baker Mayfield's playing still at an MVP level, and now you got the defense at full strength. They're beating good football teams. That Saints team is not an easy team to beat. The Bucs are doing that, and they've played some really good matchups. I like what we're seeing. I got Tampa remaining at my number 10 spot this week. Number 9, I know people aren't going to like this. I do have the Bills drop 3 this week. Despite the win over the Jets, a good win for them in division. This team has shown a serious lack of size the last few weeks. What I mean by that is when you watch this team, teams are just able to run the ball on them left and right. That concerns me. When we get into January, they're going to have some major problems. Let's look at the Baltimore game a couple of weeks ago. First play of the game, you get a 70-yard touchdown from Derrick Henry, where he just blows by everybody. There's no penetration up front for this defense, and they're not able to really generate any push to stop the run. And your linebackers are pretty limited right now, so you're not getting great play there. Then you lose to Houston. Houston is a good football team. We'll talk about them here in a little bit. But they were able to run the ball a little bit, and they were able to push the ball down the field. You kind of got a little bit of both of that from the Jets tonight. Breece Hall, who's been pretty much a non-factor for the last couple of weeks, had a pretty good game of running the football. Same thing with Aaron Rodgers. He was able to push the ball deep in this one. Allen Lazard had a really solid game. You had a good game from from Garrett Wilson. If I'm a Bills fan, I am concerned about the defense, especially if Von Miller's out. Like, you've got a lot of concerns on this defensive front. The pass rush is not great right now. And I think the defensive interior is allowing way too much in terms of defending the run. That's got to improve. I think other teams are just playing better football, quite frankly, right now. So I got Buffalo sitting at number 9 this week. And yeah, I got them dropping 3 spots despite the win. At number 8, we do have the Washington Commanders. This is a good loss if you're the Washington Commanders. You went up against a really good Baltimore team that's playing like one of the best football teams in all of the NFL right now, and you held your own. Jane Daniels didn't have a perfect game, but he played well, helped keep this team competitive, was able to kind of make plays with his legs and on the run. The accuracy didn't take a hit, which you feel good about. The defense is still the main concern. My big concern was going to be that defensive front and the run defense, and that was really apparent. Derrick Henry ran all over this team. That's going to be the blueprint to beat this team moving forward, is just to run the ball, especially now. You got Jonathan Allen out for the season, I believe a torn pec. I know he wasn't having the greatest season in the world, but that's a big loss for this defense, and a loss that I do think is going to come back to hurt them in the end. But they're playing better than any other team in the NFC East right now. I think the offense is still really good. Cliff Kingsbury's doing an unbelievable job in terms of play calling and getting guys in the right spots. And that I feel really good about. So even despite the loss, I like what I'm seeing from Washington. I got them dropping just 1 spot to my number 8 on the week. At number 7, it says number 6, but it is number 7. It is the San Francisco 49ers. They get a win against Seattle. It's a good win. I don't think it's a great win. This is a game where they almost blew it again. And it's like Kyle Shanahan, he gets a lead, and he's never able to really keep the lead. And that's what's concerning me about this San Francisco team. I don't know if I trust them as these front runners this year. There's a lot of weaknesses on this team that I think are really apparent. Number 1, I think you need to go look at this offensive line. Hasn't been good. I mean, you got good play from Pooney, and you've gotten good play from Trent Williams. That's about it. The offensive line has not looked great this year, but it's the defense. I mean, the defense as a whole has just been bad. I think the secondary has been weak. I think that the defensive pass rush has been, outside of Nick Bosa, who was an absolute monster on Thursday night, by the way. You haven't really had a great pass rush. Fred Warner is the best defensive player probably in football right now, I would say. I know we talked about Dexter Lawrence earlier, but Fred Warner is probably my pick to win Defensive Player of the Year right now. But outside of those guys, I mean, I'm not really moved by this defense. The secondary hasn't been great. And I just don't really know what to make of this team. I think Brock Purdy's playing good. I think the offense has looked okay. But a lot of concerns I have still with San Francisco. They just jump up 1 spot for me this week, and they are going to be the number 7 team on the week. And then another team that jumps up 3 is the Green Bay Packers. This is the Packers I wanted to see from the beginning. I picked the Packers to win the Super Bowl this year based on what I thought we were going to see yesterday and we saw it. We finally got to see Jordan Love really come into his own and just unleash hell on the Cardinals defense. Yeah, it's the Cardinals defense. I get it. But Jordan Love is getting comfortable, and that is a scary thought for the rest of the league because this is still one of the most gifted and physically talented quarterbacks in the league right now. And we saw it. Some of the throws he was making, some of the accuracy was starting to get cleaned up a little bit. And now this team is starting to win football games. That's what matters. They were able to run the ball, and they were really getting everyone involved. Jaden Reed got involved before he got hurt. Christian Watson comes back. Romeo Doubs has 2 touchdowns. They're able to run the ball, and the defense is able to generate stops on the other end, which was another concern. They just weren't able to get stops. I think the first real test for this Packers team, because they beat the Rams last week, which was a weird game. They lost to the Vikings the prior week. The first real test for this team with Jordan Love is going to be against Houston next week. If they're able to win that game, I think you feel pretty confident about the Packers moving forward. But this division's an absolute gauntlet. I still think the Packers, I probably have the most confidence of the 3 teams in the Packers to finish at the top right now. I'm really high on what we've seen from Green Bay, and I've got them sitting at number 6. Entering the top 5 where there really wasn't much movement this week. Baltimore gets a much-needed win over Washington in a game that I think people were trying to hyperanalyze it. This game it was a close game, but Baltimore was pretty much in control of this game from the beginning. They're using Derrick Henry the way that they should have been using him in the first few weeks of the season, actually using him. I know he had a touchdown in week 1, but in terms of carries and usage, they weren't really giving him the football, and he had a really good game against Washington. Zay Flowers really gets it going. Got Zay Flowers right above me. I mean, the offense is clicking on all cylinders, and the defense is playing well. The pass defense has been better. They've been able to generate more pressure up front. You feel pretty good about this Ravens team moving forward. I think I have a ton of confidence in this team moving forward. I picked them to be in the AFC Championship game for the second straight year. I might have been a game short. This team might be a Super Bowl team with the way they're playing right now on both sides of the football. The offense is really coming into its own. Their 4th straight win. I got the Ravens sitting at number 5. At number 4, we still have the Houston Texans. Another win against the Patriots. CJ Stroud just looks unbelievable right now. The accuracy, the timing, everything is clicking. But I think the 2 areas that we want to talk about with the Texans that I think are most important. Number 1, Joe Mixon's back, and they were able to run the football again. You were able to kind of get a few chunk plays here and there, but the running game was really inconsistent for Houston for the first few weeks of the season. You were able to really get it going in this week, and that you feel pretty good about. Number 2, the pass rush. Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter, they were able to really get after Drake May and make some plays on the quarterback. I mean, yes, you played the worst team in the league, but a win's a win. Defense looked good. Offense looked good. I got the Texans sitting at number 4. At number 3, we've got the Detroit Lions. Now, prayers for Aiden Hutchinson. Man, I took a nap after the game yesterday, and I woke up to the NFLPA basically saying, like, you know, prayers for Aiden Hutchinson. And I was just like, wait, what happened? Because Aiden Hutchinson was my pick to win Defensive Player of the Year. You look at the video, and it's just heartbreaking for a guy that was just playing at an unbelievable level. Now, I believe in a God of miracles, and I believe that he's going to come back and be at 100%. And his best football is still ahead of him. My prayers are out to the Hutchinson family. Just a heartbreaking loss for this Lions team. But on a more positive note, the Lions are back. And on both sides of the football, offensively, defensively, things really clicked for them. They're able to move the ball. I mean, the creativity of Ben Johnson in this offense it's incredible. And that's what this team has been waiting to kind of break out. They've got some awesome games coming up, some really fun ones. That Minnesota game next week, it's going to be really fun to see. The question is, like, how do you replace Aiden Hutchinson? I mean, he was on pace for 25 sacks and like 180 pressures. So, yeah, like I said, prayers to the Hutchinson family. The win's kind of going to be overshadowed by that big loss, but I think Dan Campbell's going to have some tricks up his sleeve, and they're going to find a way to make some stuff happen. I believe in this Lions team. I got them at number 3. At number 2, it's the Minnesota Vikings on the bye week, 5-0. Defense is playing like one of the best in the league under Brian Flores. This heavy blitzing scheme, the way they're able to kind of make all this stuff happen, disguise blitz, drop guys into coverage, just confuses teams. I think this team's playing great. They've shown signs of weakness. They've shown signs of weakness against up-tempo. The Sam Darnold has still been inconsistent from time to time. You'd like to see that overall get cleaned up, but they didn't play this week, didn't move up or down. And the same goes with the number 1 team, the Kansas City Chiefs. On their bye week, didn't move up or down for me. I mean, the defense is probably the best in the league right now, and we're just waiting on the offense to catch up. And, I mean, that's all I've got to say about this team. I mean, there's really – Patrick Mahomes isn't even playing good, and they're at 5-0 right now. I mean, this team's playing great team football. They're able to run the ball now with Kareem Hunt. The defense is playing great, and you're able to get a few magical plays from Patrick Mahomes once or twice a game. And that's all this team needs right now. So got the Chiefs sitting at number 1, and the top 5 remain the same this week. So that's going to do it for me in this video. Let me know what you guys agree with, what you disagree with down in the comment section. Leave a like, subscribe if you are new, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.